On Friday, August 31, 2018, a transport bus traveling at 60 kilometers an hour down a remote dirt road violently careened into a ditch. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. The impact severely injured dozens of passengers and claimed the life of a 14-year-old boy. Local news briefly mentioned the accident, blaming it on a simple collision caused by overcrowding. But the passenger list revealed a strange anomaly. The victims pulled from the wreckage were not local farmers. They were school teachers, nurses, and doctors, along with teenagers, all wearing their professional uniforms and school clothes on a standard working day. The events leading up to the crash explain why they were there. At 5:30 that morning, government agents knocked on the doors of these citizens. The agents presented official ID cards, offered no explanation, and forced them onto a 30-passenger bus at gunpoint. By the time it departed, over 40 people were crammed inside, standing shoulder to shoulder for a grueling 3-hour drive into the wilderness. This photo captures the reality of their destination. Look at this young boy dragging a massive sack of cotton. When the bus finally stopped under the blistering sun, these doctors and teachers were handed shovels. They were ordered to harvest an entire cotton field before 5 p.m. They were given no food, no water, and no breaks. If they refused or failed to meet their quota, they were told they would be abandoned in the desert to die, and their families would face severe retaliation. The people on that bus were not criminals. They were highly educated state employees. Their own government routinely kidnapped them from their homes and treated them as disposable labor, hiding a brutal, state-managed reality behind the facade of a functioning society. When we think of the most restrictive, dangerous dictatorships on Earth, we naturally picture this: North Korea, parades featuring massive mobile missile launchers, aggressive military posturing, and a constant, highly visible threat to the outside world. But consider this skyline instead. These pristine, gleaming white buildings belong to Ashgabat, the capital of Turkmenistan. Tucked away in Central Asia, it projects a bright, sterile illusion of wealth and order. Behind that pristine architecture is a regime that operates with total impunity. It is a country built on forced manual labor, the systematic psychological destruction of its citizens, and a legal structure designed to make dissenting voices vanish without a trace. A dictatorship doesn't need to threaten the globe with nuclear weapons to be terrifying. Sometimes the most efficient systems of human subjugation operate entirely out of the global spotlight. The architecture of this control was built in a moment of historic chaos. Look at this image from 1991, as the Soviet Union collapsed. For decades, Turkmenistan had been a quiet, rural Soviet republic, tightly managed by authorities in Moscow. When the USSR dissolved, that external oversight vanished instantly, leaving behind a massive power vacuum. And this man stepped directly into it. Murat Niyazov had been appointed as a local communist secretary by Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985. As soon as the Soviet safety net fell away, Niyazov banned opposition parties, absorbed the secret police, and rebranded himself as Turkmenbashi, the leader of all Turkmen. Anyone who challenged that title was erased. This is Boris Shikmuratov, a former foreign minister who resigned in 2001 to campaign for democratic elections. In November 2002, Niyazov's motorcade was allegedly fired upon. With zero evidence, the state blamed Shikmuratov. Shikmuratov and his family were arrested immediately. For weeks, they endured brutal torture. Then, on December 28th, national television broadcast a deeply disturbing confession. A heavily beaten, heavily drugged Shikmuratov sat before a camera and read from a script, claiming he was a drug-addicted criminal entirely unfit to govern. He was sentenced to life in prison. He has never been seen again. By fabricating an assassination attempt, the state created a permanent atmosphere of paranoia. They proved they could arrest a prominent international diplomat, break him on live television, and face exactly zero consequences. With rivals erased, Niyazov began work on elevating his image from a politician to a living god. Every public space became an altar to his persona, establishing a hierarchy where the leader was the only source of truth. This massive monument is dedicated to the Runama, a book written by Niyazov himself. It is a collection of mythological stories and fabricated historical facts. The regime passed laws elevating this specific book to the same sacred level as the Quran. It was placed inside mosques right next to actual religious texts. It relies on a psychological concept known as the illusionary truth effect. Repeat a lie often enough, and the brain begins to accept it as reality. The government mandated the Rukhnama in every school curriculum. To even get a driver's license in Turkmenistan, citizens were forced to complete a 16-hour course studying the dictator's personal mythology. Totalitarian control requires breaking a population's internal logic. By forcing citizens to participate in an absurd lie every single day, the state ensures the people become exhausted, compliant, and ultimately police themselves. Niyazov died of a heart attack in 2006, but the machinery he built did not die with him. As you can see here, his successor, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, simply stepped into the frame, maintaining the exact same oppressive infrastructure. Under this continued system, reporting the truth carries a lethal cost. In 2006, a 58-year-old journalist named Ogul Sapar was arrested without formal charges for exposing the government's forced labor camps. Following a 2-hour closed trial, she was handed a 6-year sentence. 3 weeks later, her children were given her sealed body. Forensic analysis later revealed she died from repeated blunt force trauma to the head. And the cruelty adapts to the times. In 2021, an activist named Murat Dashimov uploaded a video proving the state was lying about having 0 COVID-19 cases, documenting how 6 citizens were still being forced into the cotton fields. He was quickly arrested and sentenced to 4 years. Murat survived his 4 years in a cell, but in Turkmenistan, a release date is a mirage. When the day of his scheduled freedom arrived, guards did not walk him to the exit. They simply handed him a new list of entirely fabricated charges, extended his sentence indefinitely, and moved him to a new facility. The legal system has no exit. Prison sentences are purely administrative tools used to strip a citizen of their hope, ensuring that once you become an inconvenience to the state, you never see the outside world again. If a citizen defies the leadership in North Korea, retaliation is usually a swift, brutal execution. Defiance in Turkmenistan triggers something distinctly agonizing, a slow, unending psychological death inside a labor camp, leaving the victim's family in a state of permanent, terrified limbo. This chart visualizes a terrifying metric. Between 2013 and 2022 alone, human rights groups documented over 160 verified cases of enforced disappearances. These are individuals swallowed completely by the state infrastructure, with no public records, no visitation rights, and no scheduled release dates. The international community largely ignores this reality. Turkmenistan doesn't build nuclear warheads or threaten its neighbors. Its cruelty is contained entirely within its own borders, executed with terrifying quiet efficiency against its own people. The regime has perfected a method of total erasure. They can pull doctors from their homes to act as slaves, and the rest of the world never even hears them scream.